Hey guys, Nick Riley here with Driftwood Builders Roofing in Austin, Texas. Now, everyone knows Austin, Texas is an area very prone to hail, and everyone also knows that new roofs are not cheap. So customers frequently ask us a lot of insurance questions, with the biggest one being, my house has been hit by hail, will insurance pay for a new roof? And today we're going to go over all your insurance related questions, and I'm going to walk you through exactly what you should know and exactly how to deal with insurance companies. So let's get started. So the first question customers ask us is, after a big hailstorm and damage is found, will insurance pay for a new roof? And the answer is most of the time, but not always. So every insurance company is different and it depends on the specific adjuster for that insurance company. So there is a lot of element to look to it. The second thing you should keep in mind is wear and tear is a huge deal. So wear and tear is a big deal because if a roof is 20 years old, the insurance company is significantly less likely to pay for a new roof than if a roof is 4 years old and got hit by hail. And then the third thing to keep in mind is your deductible still matters. We're seeing a trend right now and the percentage of deductibles going up and up. And in my opinion, it's only going to increase. So a lot of times, even if insurance does cover your roof, you still have to pay a pretty big deductible. So we created this specific guide at Driftwood Builders Roofing called What's the Probability Insurance Will Pay for My Roof? So we've been in business for almost 21 years now, and I talk with the entire team and we create this internal guide that we use. So this very much depends on the insurance company, and every insurance company is a different policy and they're frequently changing. Also, you have to keep in mind that different adjusters work for different insurance companies, so every adjuster is different. But this general rule of thumb we put together is, after hail hits your roof, we look and inspect how big the hail is. So if hail is less than half an inch or less, the probability insurance pays for your roof is generally less than 10% because that's very small hail damage. If hail is about half an inch to 0.75 inches, then the probability that insurance is going to pay for your roof is about 25%. However, if hail damage is 0.75 inches to 1.25 inches, then it's a coin flip whether or not insurance is going to pay for your roof. But if hail is 1.25 inches to 1.5 inches, then the probability insurance is going to pay for your roof is around 75%. And then lastly, if the hail damage that's found is greater than 1.5 inches, the probability that insurance pays for the roof is usually 80% or greater. So like I said, it depends on the specific insurance company and the individual adjuster that assesses your home. But this is a general rule of thumb for what is the probability that insurance pays for your roof, depending on the size of hail damage found. One of the big questions our customers ask us is what roof damage is commonly covered. And by far the biggest one is hail damage. About 90% of the insurance situations we work with are due to hail damage on a roof. However, there are some other things that we see insurance covers, such as wind that removes shingles, or a lot of times after a big storm, trees will fall on roofs, and insurance usually covers that stuff as well. But 90% of the time, it's hail. Now, what is not covered? Well, there's a lot of things that's not covered, but the top three things is an old roof that has a lot of wear and tear. Like, we usually compare an old roof to bald-in tires on a car. They eventually need to get replaced. Insurance companies and adjusters are smart. They know that they're not going to pay for a new roof if they don't have to. The second thing insurance companies usually don't cover are pre-existing problems, more often found on older roofs, but a lot of times if a roof was repaired and the roofer did a bad job, insurance companies won't pay to get that fixed. And the third thing that insurance companies don't pay for is cosmetic damage only. But I encourage everyone to thoroughly read through your insurance documentation, or if you don't have the time, upload it to ChatGPT or your other favorite AI tool and have your AI bot analyze your insurance coverage and tell you what the high-level overview is. Now, Customers frequently ask us about their deductibles because deductibles have been a big deal, and in the future, they're only going to become more and more important. So we've seen a huge trend where in the past, deductibles were very low, most of them at 1%, and now we're starting to see deductibles tick up to 2% and sometimes even as high as 5%. So deductibles are increasingly becoming more and more important. So what we need to understand with deductibles is that that's the amount that the homeowner pays. It's a percentage number. That's a percentage of the total installed dwelling unit. So let's say hypothetically the total dwelling amount is $1 million and you have a 2% deductible, then your deductible payment would be $20,000. Now, a lot of times with homeowners who live in really nice houses, their deductible is higher than the repair. So for this simple example, let's say a house was hit by hail damage and the total cost to replace the roof is $18,000. Customers frequently ask us, what's the difference between replacement cost value and actual cash value? And to summarize in one sentence, replacement cost value is the total cost to replace your roof today, whereas actual cash value is the total cost to replace your roof minus the depreciation that's already been accounted for. So typically this comes into place with older roofs where the actual cash value gets paid instead of the replacement cost value. We highly encourage all customers to ask your insurance agent, is my roof covered at replacement cost or actual cash value? And does the age of my roof change that? After a hailstorm hits, customers frequently ask us, how does the insurance claim process work? And it's a pretty simple 5-step process. First, you call out the contractor of your choice, and they're going to climb on top of your roof, and they're going to take as many photos as they possibly can. And we highly, highly, highly encourage you to use a roofer that uses a ton of documentation. You can never use too much documentation. We specifically use company cam, but there's a lot of different great applications out there. When the roofer's on the roof, they're going to prevent more damage if it's, an emergency situation and hail is coming, The second thing that happens is after a severe weather incident, if there's immediate damage, the roofer is going to go on there and prevent the further damage by maybe placing a tarp on the roof. Now, while the roofer's on your roof, if there are any immediate actions that need to be placed, like tarping a roof so that further leaks don't happen, they will also do that. And that's the second step of the process. After a roofer shares their documentation with you and fixes any immediate issues that need to be fixed, you're going to file an insurance claim. Once you file an insurance claim, your insurance company is going to schedule a date for one of their adjusters to go to your house and look at the hail damage to see whether or not there's actually damage. Typically, the roofer will join them to represent the customer, but at the end of the day, it all comes down to what that adjuster says. So, how does the insurance claim process work? Well, after a storm incident, you're going to call a roofer of your choosing, and they're going to go onto your roof and they're going to look for hail damage or wind damage. And you choose a roofer that takes as many photos as possible and documents as much as they possibly can. And then while that roofer's on the roof, if there's any immediate issues that need to be taken care of, like an emergency tarping to prevent further leaks, they're going to do that. And then after your roofer provides you with every single photo they took, then what's going to happen is you're going to file an insurance claim. You're going to take all the documentation from your roofer, use that to file an insurance claim, and then your insurance company is going to schedule a meeting for one of their adjusters to go out to your house and meet with you and the roofer to see whether or not there's actually hail damage. Now, when I attend those meetings, I show up on behalf of the client, and I never tell the adjuster what is hail damage and what isn't, because at the end of the day, it's their decision, not mine. But I always try and be helpful and say, hey, I climbed up on the roof, and I think I might have found hail damage here, here, and here. I chalked it up to make things really nice and easy for you, but you're the expert. You tell me what hail damage is. And so in those situations, the roofer is always trying to be helpful to the adjuster and not get into a fight with them. That's no, this is hail damage. This isn't. The roofer in that situation is supposed to represent the customer by being honest and try to give the adjuster everything they need. But at the end of the day, it's up to the adjuster. During those meetings, the roofer is trying to represent the customer and give the adjuster every single thing they need. However, at the end of the day, the decision is up to the adjuster. In that situation, the roofer is going to help the customer out however they can by giving the adjuster everything they need and answering any questions about where hail damage could possibly be. But at the end of the day, the adjuster is going to document their own findings, and then they're going to send that back to the insurance company, where someone who sits at a desk, usually called a desk adjuster, is going to make a final decision about whether or not that claim gets approved. The most important thing about insurance claims is that they're all about evidence. So typically an insurance claim happens because a homeowner notices hail at their house or their roof starts to leak or an event like that. And then the roofer will go out and they look at the roof from what they see and whether or not the roof needs to be immediately fixed and what the long-term solution for that roof is. And then the adjuster will go out and look at whether loss is covered, whether damage is functional, and what scope is owed, and how the deductible applies. One of the most important things for customers in Austin, Texas to know is that there is no such thing as a free roof. Now, the thing about roofing is that there are no barriers to entry whatsoever to be a roofer. And so because of that, you see a lot of sketchy roofers, a lot of slime balls, a lot of scumbags, a lot of chuck in a truck who lie, deceive, and take advantage of people. And one of the biggest things they do is they scam insurance companies. So in the past, what a lot of roofers have done is offered to eat the deductible for homeowners. So in the past, let's just say a homeowner had a house with a total value of $500,000 and hail hit that house and they needed a new roof to be replaced, which cost a total of $30,000. And they had a 1% deductible, which is a one-time charge of $5,000. What the sketchy roofer would say to the customer is, hey, if you file an insurance claim and get insurance to pay for your roof, then the cost for you will be $5,000 and I'll give you that and I'll pay that for you. And so from a business standpoint, it made sense for the roofer because the margins on insurance approved roofs. And for a business standpoint, it made sense for a roofer because the margins on insurance approved roofs are about 50%. So 50% of 30,000, it's about $15,000 profit on the roof. And they're going to pay a $5,000 deductible to get that. So it makes sense from a business standpoint, but it's incredibly sketchy and illegal. In fact, it's insurance fraud. So when you deal with a roofer and insurance, you want to be very careful of roofers who say, we'll eat your deductible, you'll get a free roof, or a lot of vague contracts and handshake promises. You want to stay away from those. What you want to look for in a roofer is a detailed written scope of work that outlines all the materials, significant documentation in the recommendation, a thorough explanation of their deductible, and a clear explanation of repair versus replacement costs. Now, there's a lot that goes on with insurance, but the top 5 things we want customers to know is number 1, thoroughly read through and review your policy. Or if you don't want to read the whole thing, have your favorite AI chatbot read it for you and summarize it, but definitely know your policy. The devil is in the details. The second thing we want homeowners to know is it's impossible to take too much documentation. One of my nightmares is my customer has hail hit their roof and we don't take enough documentation, so insurance doesn't approve it. Had that happen, I wouldn't be able to sleep at night. You can never take too much documentation. Take as many photos as you can and ask your roofer to do the same thing as well. The third thing is get an honest inspection. Use a quality roofer who's been in business for a long time and not some chuck in a truck who knocks on your door. The fourth thing homeowners need to account for is their deductible. Now, this is very important recently as deductibles have been constantly rising, make sure you know how much your deductible is. It might be more expensive to pay your deductible than for insurance to pay for a new roof. And the fifth thing is avoid insurance deductible games and sketchy roofers. There's no such thing as a free roof, and be very, very skeptical of roofers who offer to pay for your deductible. Hey, Austin, Texas homeowners. So lastly, we're going to go over the top 10 myths about insurance. So the number one myth is filing a claim always makes your premium go up. That is simply not true. If you think there's a potential for damage, you should absolutely file a claim. That's what you pay your insurance company for. You have nothing to lose. The second biggest myth homeowners think is that insurance always buys a new roof. That is not the case. They usually do, but not always. And the third most important factor is the adjuster your insurance company sends out, which is why we suggest that if there is possible for a hail damage, you file a claim with your insurance companies, because there's definitely an element of luck with the insurance adjuster that you get there. The fourth biggest myth is my roofer can waive the deductible. No, that's not true. In Texas, it's illegal. It's called insurance fraud. The fifth biggest myth is that a roof leak guarantees coverage. That's absolutely not true. It totally depends on the amount of damage found. The sixth biggest myth is that replacement costs and actual cash value pay the same. That is not true. They produce two very different checks for customers. The seventh biggest myth is that a denied claim means customers are stuck. Having insurance companies deny your claim is very disheartening, and we've seen it happen all the time. However, there are certain recourse actions you can take. The eighth biggest myth is that cosmetic dents are always covered like functional damage. That is not true. It's a very different situation. The ninth biggest myth is that the adjuster and the roofer have the same job. That's absolutely not true. The roofer goes up and takes as much documentation as possible and tries to help the adjuster out by saying, hey, we found hail damage here and here, but let me know what you think. And it's the adjuster's job to review that hail damage and decide whether or not it should be covered. And then they send it up to your desk adjuster, who makes the final decision. The 10th biggest myth is that you should make permanent repairs before filing. That's absolutely not true. You should fire as soon as possible. And if there are emergency tarpings or things like that that need to be done, ask your roofer to do that when they're on the roof taking documentation. Thank you so much for your time and have a great day.